Well, hi, Janet. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So we have a few participants that have already joined us for our first webinar of 2022 in our author series. We're excited. We have Rose Dunphy with us. She has written a book called Orange Peels and Cobblestones. We'll meet her in just a minute. But Janet, here we are, 2022. Who knew? I remember Y2K. That was 22 years ago.
Yeah, I haven't thought about Y2K for a long time. I remember everybody remembers New Year's Eve in 2000, in 1999, I guess it was, when we thought
Yes.
some people thought planes were going to fall from the sky.
The computers were going to crash. I had just got my job in Greenville at the hospital up there in PR. And we all stayed up the whole night. We were waiting for, the generators to go on, and it was nothing. It was a
Yeah,
non-event.
yeah. I remember that. And we thought, everybody would lose all their data and all the backup. And I think that was actually all the IT consultants trying to scare companies into, spending
Right.
millions on consulting for them. But how were your holidays, Robin?
My holidays were great, actually. I am now a great grandmother. So I have a grandson. I think I told you he's 31. He lives in Savannah. And so he and Julia had a little boy, Porter James. And he is cute as a button. So he's 1 month old now. So I can't believe it, but this is my oldest. I have 3 stepdaughters, and this is my daughter that lives up in Boston. It's her son, my oldest grandson's child. So that was exciting. A lot of family in and out. So, it was like Grand Central Station, actually. How about you?
Well, that's great. Oh, we had a good holiday. It was quiet, but I always go visit hospice patients on Christmas
Oh,
because I
wow.
think some people don't have any. And my husband and I visited 5 hospice patients, and
Oh,
one of
yeah.
them was at the skilled nursing facility at Tide Point. And when I went in, the nurse was giving her a manicure.
Oh,
So I thought that was so sweet.
that was
And
so
then
sweet.
we visited an older man in Rose Hill who was by himself but has a full-time in-house caregiver. And I know he was happy to see us, but I think the caregiver was happier that we came to see, and she just wanted to chat up. And my husband
Oh,
I think my husband enjoyed meeting him because he had all these replica sailboats and stuff that were amazing. So anyway, it's always a nice, we have always felt like on the holidays, like we always work on Thanksgiving at the community, Thanksgiving dinner
right.
at Hudson's. And I think,
That's
especially
wonderful,
when it's
Janet.
just the 2 of us, it's always
Right.
nice to be with other people and to feel like you're doing something good for other folks. So we get more out of it than they do,
I
but it was
know.
nice.
Well, and I understood that you have been chairman of the board of Hospice of the Low Country, and they've asked you to be chairman of the board again this year,
Well,
right?
this is my 4th year, but this is my
Oh,
last year.
okay.
This is my last year. I keep telling them they have to get a successor. So hopefully we will.
Well, you have a new community relations person, engagement person for a hospice that I interviewed on Talk of the Town. Delightful young woman.
Yes. Is her name
Absolutely.
Sharonica? Did you meet
Yes.
Sharonica?
Yes. She
Yes,
was
yes.
outstanding. She's going to be a great spokesperson for you all and great
Well, and
community.
she's a long-term island person.
Okay, perfect.
She grew up on the island and her family's from the island, and she's from the Gullah community, and she knows a lot of people, and that's great with a community relations person, is
Yeah, and
somebody who knows everybody.
she had just started, and 2 weeks later she was on our Talk of the Town show, and she was, I mean, on it. She had answers. She was great. I
Yeah,
had no idea, but she was wonderful.
that's good to hear. I will hear her. Is
Yeah.
that playing now? I'll have to look.
Gosh, we tape every Tuesday, so I don't remember. It's always on YouTube, and it's always on the WHHI TV website.
Oh, good.
So
I'll look on YouTube. Thank you for mentioning that.
So I know we're not doing a poll, but we are going to be talking a little bit as we move forward with the author series, Janet, on frequency. We have been doing it every month, and this is our 19th webinar. And so we are going to ask our members, do they want to maybe go every other month? Do we want to take the summers off? So we're asked, we need some input from everyone. Right?
Yes, we had decided, Robin, 4 or 5 months ago that what we wanted to do, Claudia Ayler, our new president, who will come into office in June, we wanted to really think about what Claudia would want to do and what advice she would give us. And Betty really said, well, let's do them monthly by Zoom author series through her presidency, which is through May. So we're scheduled through May to be on Zoom. But we decided 4 or 5 months ago that we would kind of pause in January, work with Claudia, and also do market research. So everybody on the call today will be getting an email that we really hope they'll answer. And there'll be a lot of questions on that. One of them is frequency. Do we still want to keep every month? Another big question for us, Robin, is venue. Do we want to go to some in-person venues, in-person events where you can actually meet the author and do a book signing? The authors would prefer that because, the authors and the literary agent can literally count that they went to an event with 80 people and they sold 40 books. It's hard with these Zooms that they're doing with everyone to know whether or not it really results in book sales. And we have a lot of anecdotal information that we've given them. I know you've had this experience, Robin, where we've talked to people who've said, oh, I read right out and, bought, so one of our authors' books. I went right out and bought Mary Alice Monroe's book or whatever. So we had people telling us that this is stimulating the right books, but the literary agents and the authors can't tell, whether doing all these Zooms really results in more book sales.
Well, and when we started too, we seem to have more participants, and I think it's only fair to the authors when we do the Zoom that we average about 30, 40 or so, and sometimes we have been a little over that or under. So maybe having kind of a hybrid approach. We do some Zoom, we do some in person, but it's all about the author and giving them the opportunity to share why they got into writing and how they wrote that particular novel, that particular book. But it's also about our members and really doing what they want to do and feel that we should, as we move forward, to do. So,
well, we really envisioned this pre-COVID, if anybody can remember before we had COVID, we really envisioned this as an opportunity to have events where like-minded people could mingle in bigger groups than just the little book group they're in. And so we know we do these big quarterly lunches, and we were just finalizing the February one. I'm planning the April big quarterly lunch. But and then there's the small book groups. But in between those two sizes, we thought we'd do kind of mid-size events where people could mingle and mix. And actually, you can't do that during Zoom. People aren't really meeting each other, which was part of our objective. So, but meeting in person costs because you have to pay for the venue and pay for something that people have an appetizer and something to drink. And so, so the marketing survey is going to help inform us. And of course, if we would do in-person events, we wouldn't do them every month. That would be way too much.
That would be, no.
So we might do, there's all kinds of things. Like we might do
once a quarter.
An in-person, we could do an in-person, a nice big in-person event once a quarter, and then do on the off months do Zoom. Right. There's lots of different options, but we want to hear from we really want to hear from the members because we don't want to just be talking to ourselves about this.
Exactly. So that will be coming up. And we do like to get your recommendations for other authors that you want to hear from, or books that you've read over the holidays, or a colleague of yours or a neighbor has recommended. So, we have that chat button, that icon down at the bottom of your laptop, or it could be the top if you're on an iPad. So just use that chat button and that icon, just click on it and just go ahead and type in any recommendations or any thoughts you have about potential authors you'd like to see on our author series. Again, we've been doing this almost 2 years now. And it's just been delightful. We've had amazing authors. We've had some stupendous interviews, and we want to continue, but we need feedback from you all, our members. So, and then again, books that you want to recommend. I want to show this one to you. This is kind of a surprise, Janet. My neighbor gave me this book. Have you ever heard of this book? This was my Christmas present. And I think it's a very serious, I have not started reading it, but I wanted to know if maybe anybody out there, it looks like it's received the Man Booker Prize Finalist Award. So wow. My neighbor's German, and I don't know if that has anything to do with this particular choice, but I'm excited to start it. It's kind of thick. So
yeah. Well, you'll have to let me know. The book that I would recommend lately is, many people on the audience probably read A Gentleman from Moscow, a gentleman in Moscow. And that was by an author named Amor Towles. And he has a Towles, Amor Towles. And he has a book out called The Lincoln Highway, which I would recommend. And it's gotten great reviews. And I think a lot of people enjoyed Gentleman in Moscow. So that's my book recommendation.
That's your book recommendation. All right.
So with that, Robin, I'm going to sign off and let you get started, okay?
All righty. Welcome, ladies, to the Women's Association of Hilton Head Islands Author Series for 2022. This is our 19th webinar. Can't believe it's been almost 2 years that we have been bringing you these best-selling authors to the members of our association. We're very excited to welcome a new author. Actually, this is her first book. The book is called Orange Peels and Cobblestones, and the author is Rose Dunphy, and she would join us in just a moment. But at this time, I would like to remind you that this is a webinar. You can see us, but we cannot see you. So don't worry, you can be in your PJs or whatever. But we do want to get input from you, and we want this to be a dialogue. So we have that chat button icon. You can go ahead and make book recommendations, ask questions. We do have our phenomenal Nancy Fish. She's our technologist, our IT specialist. She can forward any ideas, questions to Janet Porter, who will be doing the interview. Or if you have any problems, you could go ahead and put it in that chat button as well. So again, we want this to be interactive as much as we can during a Zoom call or a Zoom video. So without further ado, I'd like to bring in my dear friend and colleague, Janet Porter. She is a wonderful human being, friend, and interviewer. She always does a superb job. So Janet, happy 2022 to you, my dear. And
thank you, Robin.
I'm looking forward to this interview.
Did I ever tell you that as a child, I thought when they were saying human being, they were saying human bean, B-E-A-N.
No,
I was about third or fourth grade before I read being, and I thought it was human being.
Janet.
Anyway, thank you, Robin.
Okay, right. Have a good interview.
So welcome, everyone. I'm pleased to introduce you today to Rose Dunphy, who'll be joining us in just a minute. So she was educated in Italy, born in Italy, and educated in both Italy and New York. And she spent her childhood years in her native country of Italy, but so she knows the Italian culture and language from both sides of the Atlantic. Rose received her bachelor's degree from St. Joseph's College to teach biology and physical sciences to middle and high school students, and then later got a master's degree from Stony Brook University, extending her teaching licenses to include earth science and English. And she was a teacher for many years. She taught science and New York skills for 10 years, and she also taught Italian to adults on a private basis as a tutor. When she took time off to raise her family, her other love, which so many of us could relate to, which was writing, grew. And she's had essays and articles that have been published in the New York Times, Newsday, Christian Science Monitor, and other publications. Rose also ran her own public relations firm and provided financial literature for public companies. So she travels extensively, and she's married and the mother of 4. And she currently resides in both Long Island, New York, and Delray Beach, Florida, which I think is where she's joining us from today. And this is her first novel. So Rose, please join us. So Rose, we can't hear you or see you. So you need to turn on your audio and your video.
Unmute and video.
We can hear you now, Rose, and we can see
good.
you, and we can see you. Hello, hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Nice to chat with you.
Rose, you know, our readers today, our members today represent, you know, all kinds of people from across the island who have all kinds of life experiences, but they always want to hear about when authors realized that they really wanted to be a writer, and whether it was in their childhood or later in life, or how that kind of came to you. Not only that you wanted to be a writer, but that you know that it was a profession where you could actually publish and make money at it. So would you talk about how that came about for you?
Well, it really comes about from a need to write something. You have something calls you or draws you to write a story, event, anything that just moves you to write. You think about the writing first. You don't think about getting published. I mean, you do it first because you're excited, but really, in order to reach that goal, you have to write the story first. So for me, writing became, I always loved to write. Even in school, I was always a good writer. I got good grades. I was always encouraged by my teachers to write. And then even after I was out of school, out of college, and I was married, I always wrote personal essays and things like that and submitted them to newspapers and magazines. And luckily, I was able to get some published. But it wasn't until, when it comes to writing a book, which is a totally different game, books are hard to write. An article, an essay is easy. You can get that done in even in a night sometimes if you have a good idea. And then you need to revise it, of course. So you need a few more days for that before you polish it and send it off. But when it comes to books, it has to be a story that's inside of you that really touches you. And that was the case with me with Orange Peels and Cobblestones, which is my book. And it's based on an event that happened to me. And very often, authors do write autobiographically. They see something or they experience something, and they have a need to write it and to share it with others. And that's what I did with Orange Peels and Cobblestones.
So, Rose, the trick with interviewing an author is for you to tell enough of the story that you intrigue people, but not so much that I've been to some author events where the person told so much of the story, they thought you don't need to read the book now. So tell us enough about Orange Peels and Cobblestones, which I've read twice, that we give people the lay of the land and intrigue them to want to buy the book.
Okay, well, Orange Peels and Cobblestone is both a love story and a coming of age novel that takes place in Italy, in New York, and in California. And as I said, it's based on a true event that happened to me, which I fictionalized to some extent, to a rather big extent. But the thrust, the main gist of the book is based on a true experience. And the experience was that when I was 10 years old, my mother, I was living in Italy with my mother, my father, they were separated, and my grandmother. We lived with my mother's mother at the time. But when I was 10, my mother put me on a plane alone to travel more than 3,000 miles from Italy to New York to be adopted by an aunt and uncle I had never met. I knew of them, but I had never met them. And so for me, it was a very traumatic experience to leave my big, large Italian family that loved me and that I loved them back and travel to a new country, new language, new culture, new family, and alone at that. So, as I said, it was so traumatic that always stayed with me. And I felt totally abandoned and rejected, really, but even more betrayed by my own mother. And so growing up, questions haunted me. Questions like, how does a mother give away her own child? How could my mother give me away? And why did she do it when I was 10, not when I was a baby and I wouldn't have felt the pain of separation so keenly? So those questions haunted me. And in order to heal from them, now as an adult, as a child, I just buried it all because I couldn't deal with it. But as an adult, those questions would come back at different times of my life. And I knew I had to heal from them because they bothered me every time a significant event came, like the birth of my children, or maybe their first communion, or when they turned 10. Those were all significant times. So I just said, you know what? I write other things that even get published, even though it's an essay or it's not any great masterpiece, but it got published. And why don't I write this story down? Whether it even gets published or not, I need to write it just for some healing from this experience. So, so I started to do that. And then as I got into it and trying to answer those questions, because they were uppermost in my mind. How does a mother give away her own child? Why did my mother do it for me? Why not for my sister? I had a younger sister, but I was the one that was sent away by myself. So, and not that I wanted her to be gone, because I loved my sister and I still do. But these are questions that I kept asking. And so in writing that down, what came back are those feelings of betrayal, feelings of rejection and abandonment. And I couldn't deal with them. They were so painful. They really were. And so I say, well, you know what? Let me put that down for a while. Let me write my happier pieces, and that would satisfy me. But as the years went on, the questions kept coming back. And again, I buried them until one day when I tried to bury them one more time, they just refused to go down. And I knew, I said, you know, it's time. I have to deal with these questions, these feelings, and just get out of it. This way I can finally move forward emotionally. And so I did. And I cried. I cried through the pages as I wrote them. And but I am so much happier that I've written the story, because it just has released those feelings. And I've accepted my mother, who has now passed away, my real mother, much more than before, because I always had that resentment again. I loved her and I hated her at the same time. And that's really no way to be a healthy person. And I wanted to be a good mother to my own children. And so I needed to deal with that. And that's how the book came about.
So Rose, I want to remind our readers, our listeners today, that they can send in questions. All they have to do is go to the toolbar to the chat function, and they can send in questions that I'll be able to see and that I will ask you, Rose. So if any, I think Rose has already stimulated questions in my mind and probably has in many of yours too. So while I'm waiting for people to chat in, I want to say, Rose, so it seems to me a major question for you was did you write the story as a memoir or did you write it as nonfiction? So talk about why you decided to write it as nonfiction as opposed to a memoir.
I did. I wanted to write the story, and I started writing it as a memoir at first with which is a memoir. And that was so painful. And I said, I wonder if I write it in third person, where I am detached from the story. I'm telling a story based on my life in many ways, but the scenes are here and I'm here. I'm not a part of the scenes. I'm just describing what I see. And so I could do that in third person. And while it was painful, it was less painful than doing it in first person. So I chose to do it that way. Plus, I also I didn't want it to be a memoir because I didn't want my mom to get really angry at me once she found out. And also, to be honest, because of the experience of being given away, I didn't trust her anymore. And what if she sued me? So all of those reasons, I said third person is better. This way is more of a novel rather than a memoir. And she can't say that I'm making up stuff that isn't true, because I am making up some stuff that isn't true. So she said that my answer is it's a novel. And it's based on the one event that happened to me. Yes, because that she couldn't say that wasn't true because it was indisputable what had happened.
And did she live long enough to read the book?
She knew I was writing the book. She actually wanted me to write her story, which I found strange because it was my story, but she was in it. but she wanted me to write her story, and her story, I would have been in it too. So I don't know how different that was. But I felt, I told her, Mom, I can't write your story. I can only write my story at this point. So,
Wow.
but she never read the book. So I can tell you that much because she got sick, and then she just passed away and never got to read the book. My sister,
So,
my sister and all my relatives in Italy have read the book. And when we first went back to Italy after it had been published, originally I sent them a copy from home. You know, I mailed it. I mailed it to about 12 different cousins and aunts and uncles. And then when I talked to them, they said, Rosetta, they called me Rosetta when I was there, and they still call me that. They said, you know, all in Italian, they're saying to me, well, it looks wonderful, the book, oh, we like the cover, we like this, we like that, but we don't know English. We don't understand English. We don't know anything about the story. So what happened then is I decided to translate the book into Italian.
mm,
And that got published, and that's called Ciotole e Bucce d'Arancia. And if you look, it's the same cover, basically, only taken a different, it's a photo of the street where I was born, which is this, it's a small street called Vico Sedile, and it's in Castellaneta, Italy, Castellaneta, Provincia di Taranto, near Bari and Taranto. Those are the bigger cities. And this town, Castellaneta, dates back to medieval times. When I researched the history of it, which I didn't know when I was living there, but later when I researched its history, there's history of from about 800
AD.
AD. Yes, I almost went back to BC, but it's not that far. But the town itself has some Greek features to it. If you look at the houses, maybe this would be a better picture, because actually they're photos which I submitted so that I could have the cover done this way, because the street and the house meant a lot to me. This is my grandmother's house where I lived, and I played on the street my whole time that I was in Italy. You know, we spent most of our time outside, and then just went in for meals and sleeping. But this area that the street and the town itself is in, Castellaneta, is called Greca Minore, which means minor Greece. So if the houses look a lot like some of the Greek houses with the white outside stone and
Stucco.
very few windows and so forth. I wanted that for my cover. But in getting back to the story of why I did it in Italian, so that my relatives can now read it. And with some of their help, even actually, because some of them were English teachers in Italy, I wrote it as best as I could write it, being a 10-year-old person. They helped me with some of the idioms, because I didn't remember or learn some of the idioms that came out later. And this book, as I said, Ciotole e Bucce d'Arancia, is longer in pages than this one, because Italians are more flowery in their language. And if you notice, even the title, Ciotole e Bucce d'Arancia, means cobblestones and orange peels, which is opposite orange peels and cobblestones. Why? Because it flows better. Those words flow better than the actual literate translation of the title. So, but when I brought, and then what happened was I went back to Italy with my husband and my children, and I brought these books with me. And I gave these books to each of my cousins and relatives as much as I could. And as soon as I would give them the book, they'd hide, they go disappear, because they wanted to start reading it. And they would, many of them read it like in about 2 to 3 days. And it was interesting because they knew the story and they wanted to know what my take on it was now. And some of them thought that what an opportunity I got to come to America. And yes, that is true. And others remember the heartache that was, with the family, with them and with me, how much they missed me when I left, and how much they saw me um, suffer in a way when I left. And so I remember saying to one cousin, Peppino, who is in the book, I said to him, Peppino, what do you remember of that last day when I was leaving? When my mother brought me to the train station to take us to Rome for me to get on the plane to come to the United States. And so he says, oh, how you cried. And I don't remember crying, but I can see it now because that's what children do at 10 years of age. And of course, I cried, as I said, when I wrote the book as well. But when he said that, just made me realize, yes, because my memory was that I was a stoic, no feeling person, because it was the only way to cope with the break, with the separation of leaving the family that loved me and that I loved so much, and that I knew I was going into strange territory. And I'm so afraid of all of that by myself. So, so giving them this book was a wonderful experience for me, because then I got a lot of their take on um, the experience. And even though the book was already written, it just helped me to heal more and to forgive my mother, really,
Yeah.
which I have come to. Um, it's not happily, but really there's no choice, because why would I be miserable for the rest of my life if I didn't forgive her? Do I want to be
Yeah.
constantly resentful? No. And I did forgive her. She did the best she could. Those were her choices. They wouldn't have been mine. And in raising my own children, I was a very protective mother because nothing could happen to my children. So I kind of went the other extreme. I don't want to prolong this question so much in case you have others.
So let me tell you that Patty, who I know is your friend, who recommended you for speaking today, she's asking me to talk about whether returning to Italy was helpful or stressful for you.
Well, it was stressful while I was still in the United States, because the first time we were to go back, I wasn't sure what kind of reception I'd get. First of all, I thought they forgot about me, because for many years with my adoptive parents, who were really my aunt and uncle, they forbade me from having contact with my family in Italy and with my family with my mother, who moved to California. Um, and so without having any contact with them over the years, I thought, well, they probably forgot about me. And maybe they think, oh, she forgot about us. So they didn't think, I'm thinking they're not thinking highly of me anymore. But they encouraged me to go and visit them. And we went for 3 weeks in August. And when we got there, now I landed in Milan, but when we got there, I just expected my cousin to come and pick me up. Because he, believe it or not, had come the summer before to visit me in New York for maybe 3 or 4 days. And then he was going to California to visit my mother. And so, when we arrived at the airport, all of a sudden, this group of people just came towards us, and they must have had about 12 bouquets. They all came with flowers. And I thought, oh my gosh, are these all from me? Each one, I had cousins, some even that had driven from Castellaneta up to Milan. And it's a good, I don't know how many miles it is, but it does take all day if you drive. And Italians drive fast anyway. But so they were all there wanting to meet me. And of course, my husband and my children. And you have to go back with Italians. If you don't go back with your family, it's not the same, because they value family so much. So when we arrived, with all these flowers, I thought I was like the Queen of England. I really thought, I said, oh my gosh, they didn't forget me. They remembered me. And then we go outside and there's about 10 cars waiting for us because they knew that they said, oh, those are Americans. They're going to come with a lot of suitcases. And we did, because I had my 4 children. My 2 daughters were teenagers at the time. And, you know, a suitcase for this and a suitcase for that, the hair, the everything, the shampoos, they brought everything. And I told them, I said, look, whatever you bring, you carry. We're not carrying it for you. So they were fine with that. Then I had my son, who was also a young teenager, but we had a 5-year-old daughter as well at the time. So, you know, so she was the one that whose suitcase we had to carry, and my son carried that. So, as I said, at home in New York, I worried that they might not remember me, but once we got to Italy, they remembered me so much, and they just opened their arms to me and my family, not just me, but my family as well.
So it sounds like the answer to the question is that it was helpful more than stressful for you.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
it would, yes, it helped to heal a lot of things even further, just to rejoin my family from origin, so to speak. Because when I came to America, I had no family other than my aunt and uncle. And there was another aunt who also lived there. She wasn't married at the time, but they were older, they were the same age as my grandmother and grandfather. But my aunt and uncle that adopted me didn't have any children. And I believe that probably was the stimulus for doing this whole adoption trading thing. And the other aunt never had children either. So they were really solitary older people. And I had come from such a large, warm, loving, outgoing, young family of aunts and uncles and cousins and so forth, that that was a big adjustment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that answers Mary Ellis wanted me to ask you, did you have any other relatives in New York? So that answers it. And Meryl asked me to, you know, her comment was, I'm so sorry that you had this experience and this happened to you, Rose. I'm glad that writing has released the feelings that you had pent up. I look forward to reading it. So I think you've stimulated folks to want to read it. I want to talk about 2 themes in the book that, from my perspective, one
Okay.
theme is about forgiveness.
Yes.
So talk about how what message you wanted to portray about forgiveness in the book.
Well, I think what I want to say is that I wrote the book from my point of view, from the adopted child, but you can also look at it from the mother who gives away her child. And they can be 2 different perspectives, of course. And so in order to forgive, you have to understand the other person, what their motives were, what their situation was, what their advantages and disadvantages were. And I forgave, and I think forgiveness is a very good thing to do, because it heals you. It really doesn't affect the person you forgive. It heals you. And I did it more for myself than I did it for my mother. And I wanted a close relationship with my real mother, because I loved her. You know, she gave me life. She was there the first 10 years of my life. And I just didn't want that to end like that. And so more forgiveness, as I said, forgiveness is for yourself. We have a very good friend. He wrote a book on forgiveness. And that's exactly what he says, that you forgive. The other person doesn't even know sometimes that they hurt you or how
Yes,
they
that's
hurt
right.
you. And so it's all within you to feel, not to carry that anger and resentment that they're not even aware of many times. So forgive and move forward. And
Yes.
that's exactly what I did.
Another one of our readers asked, did you forgive? Did you and your mother ever talk about, and where she told you why she decided to give you up to your aunt and uncle, particularly at the age of 10? Did you ever have that conversation so that you that gave you
Yes.
greater understanding?
Yes, I did, and I have that in the book. And that's a very powerful scene that I have in the book, where I ask her those exact questions. Mom, how could you give me away? Why did you do it when I was 10? Um, and then I said, why me and why not my sister? But I didn't want, it's not that I wanted you to give her away, but why did you choose me? I just want to know. And so I have that scene. I won't say more about it because it's a very powerful scene in the book. And I don't want to spoil it for a reader.
Well, it's interesting, Rose, because when I saw this question, it's still blurry in my mind how much of it is a memoir versus autobiographical.
I know.
Because some of the things you've said are different than the book. So I know
Good.
that scene from the book. But I didn't know if that was a true scene or a scene you wish to have.
That's
So the
true.
people reading it now, who read it now will know. And I'm glad you're not revealing what happened. But they will now know that actually came from more of a memoirist perspective
Yes.
than a fictionalized account of a conversation that you wished you had.
Right. That scene did happen. Some of the description of it, like it didn't happen at the time sequence that I have in the book. It was different when it really happened in my life. And of course, I did fictionalize or dramatize some things in the book. I remember saying to my cousin Peppino in Italy, I said, well, you know it's a true story. I said, because you know what happened. He was 10 years old at the same time when I was 10 years old. So I said, but I dramatized it. You know, I wanted to make it, because in writing a book, you want to make it much more interesting and dramatic for the reader. So he said to me, he says, Rosetta, it didn't need any more dramatization because it was such a
It was such dramatic anyway. Yeah.
And dramatic experience. And that's how I always saw it. But still, in the book, I did change some of the timelines. I did change some of the locations of things. So, because my story takes place over probably 40 years at least. And whereas in the book, the time is, it's from, let's just say, well, maybe it's
about 20 years.
or
Yeah,
less.
it's about 20
Definitely
years.
less than, yes.
Yeah. That was my impression. So the other theme that I want to talk about is this sense of longing for home.
Yeah.
And I've discovered as an adult that different people have a really strong orientation and attachment to place and to home, and that stirs something in them that I don't have, because my family moved around all the time growing up. I lived in different houses in different cities, and because my father got transferred a lot. So you have a strong orientation to place as a longing in the book that really pervades the whole book for the main character, whose name is Marietta.
Yes. If you notice, this is the home that I lived in. And for example, you say you moved a lot, but you never moved from your parents. You never moved from your family. You were always a unit, where I wasn't. I lost my place. By being sent away, I lost my home. And I always wanted to get it back. And I lost my sense of belonging. And anytime, even to this day, I like to stay at home. So the writing is perfect for me because I can stay at home and do it. But home means so much to me. Home means not being given away. Home means being with your mom, your dad, your sisters, your brothers, your cousins. So, and I remember even when I first came from Italy and I saw, what is that play? Hold on. Well, the song from it, you might be able to tell me the name again because it escapes me. The song from it is On the Street Where You Live. you remember it,
My
Jim?
Fair Lady.
Yes, My Fair Lady, probably. Yes, that's it. So On the Street Where You Live, I love that song. And I'm trying to say, why do I love that song more than some of the other songs, which are just as beautiful? But it's this street where I lived that I wanted to regain. So it really spoke to me. So that's why and I played here all the time. I would say in my first 10 years, I spent the daytime hours out here. So to me, it meant a lot. And my grandmother's house, whom, when I was old enough, I used to wash these stairs with a pail of water and some on a cloth and some soap suds and everything, and then rinse it. And to me, I know it sounds weird to people today, but that was such a treasure for me because it meant that I belong here. These are my steps too. They're my grandmother's, but they're my steps too. And then to have that wrenched away from you by removing you, that's where the sense of home never left me, that I always longed for it. And to me, it's very important to have a sense of home.
Yeah, I was gonna use the word yearning
Yearning.
because that sense of yearning really comes across in the book. A just a abdominal yearning.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you to write this book, Orange
Um,
Peels and Cobblestones?
it really took probably from start to finish at least 10 years.
Did
Because
it?
as I said, I had to keep putting it down and this and that because it was just so painful. And then including in that is probably a year or two of revisions, because it was such a personal story that I needed some space to make sure that, I had done it well. I even asked the assistance of an editor who was very helpful to me, which was great. And I thank all the people, many of my friends and a number of, and a couple of book clubs wanted to read it for their selection for the month. And they were extremely helpful with their critique of the book. And I thank them in the book. But it took a long time because it just was such a deep personal story for me. And I'm writing a second novel right now, and that too is taking a long time. I'm not a fast writer. I'm a slow writer because I can't give up also the sense of family. I need to have time for my husband and my 4 children, which I have raised, and now they're adults. And now the grandchildren have come along. So to me, family is very, very important. I love writing, but I love family.
Well, tell
equally.
us quickly, just what's your second book about real quickly?
Well, I don't want to really say.
Okay. That's
Because
okay. I get
I'm,
that.
yes, at this point, I'm not ready to reveal it.
Okay.
I'm about halfway finished. I want to see where it goes.
Okay. Well, good luck. We'll look forward to it. So we thank you so much for sharing the gift of your personal story with all
Thank
of
you.
us. I read the book twice. I don't read a lot of books twice, but I enjoyed it much more the second time. I don't know why, but I really loved it the second time more than,
Thank you.
I enjoyed it the first time, but then the second time I thought, it wouldn't usually you would think that the second time you'd be like, oh, I know what happens, but I had actually forgotten what happens. And I think I was able to appreciate the undertones sort of and thematically it more the second time.
Right. There's also the love story interest of where Marietta meets her husband to be and how that evolves. And the fact that he's not Italian, he's
Yeah.
Irish.
Yeah.
And so, that was another element that I wanted to put in there.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate so much you joining us today. Thank you so much. And I want to tell you that Mary Kay Gill said, this is my first event with Wahi. I'm so impressed. Thank you for this touching interview. I can't wait to read the book. So, we accomplished our objective here. So thank you very much, Rose.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A pleasure.
So you need to turn off your video now.
Thank you, Rose. Great job. Thank you, Janet. That was
Thank you, Robin. Bye-bye.
The 2 themes, the power of forgiveness and how forgiveness really heals the person that needs to be doing the forgiveness, and then the sense of home. And home is really not a place, it's not a building, it's family. So I have not read the book, but I agree. I'm going to go get it and I'm going to read it. Appreciate your time with Wahi. And now at this time, I'd like to bring in our president, Betty Hamilton. We had a wonderful luncheon in December as we celebrated the arts and the resilience in the arts. We have another big luncheon coming up the end of February and a lot of other things. So Betty, I'm going to turn it over to you, my dear.
Thank you so much, Robin. This was a great interview. I just was amazed and wrapped with the story that Rose had to tell. I haven't read the book yet, but it certainly puts a new light on how I will interpret the story as I read it. So thank you, Robin, and thank you, Janet, for that interview. One of the things that I'm usually asked to do is to give you some idea of what's ahead in Wahi. And, we always thought that the fall was busy, and what more can we do this winter? Well, I think you all need to put your seatbelts on. Stay tuned to your weekly pink paper newsletter. And here are a few things to whet your appetite. On January 27th, we have another, actually a special event. It's going to be a webinar featuring Joy Baldridge, and she's going to share with us how to handle whatever life throws at you. And I am sure we will all gain some interesting perspective from that. So the signups are already being taken for that on the member website. So be sure you sign up for that. Then on, then on January 31st, we have a debut program. It's a member spotlight. Tamara Everett, our past president, is going to be the hostess for that. And she's going to be featuring several of our Wahi members who have had unique or interesting careers. The first one will be January 31st, and I will be honored to be spotlighted at that one. February 2nd is our second annual, I guess it'll be annual now, Groundhog Day Trivia Night. So you can also sign up for that now. February 10th will be our next author series, and it will be featuring Kelly Mustaine. I think that you were given a little hint of that a little earlier in the program. March 10th will be author Marie Benedict returning to talk to us about her latest novel. February 21st is our third member luncheon of the year. It will be again at the Sonesta, and our focus will be on celebrating the resilience through women's health. And Dr. Rochelle Ringer will be our keynote speaker. So I certainly look forward to seeing you at that. March 15th, we are going to be having our spring fundraiser. It will be at the Skull Creek Pavilion, and it will be for the benefit of Youth Service Awards. It will have a St. Patrick's Day theme. There's an exciting Irish themed dinner, and we will have real Irish music at that. April 20th, we're going to try something new, another fundraiser, and it will be a garden, patio, and landscape tour. The committee that is planning this fundraiser is in the process of identifying gardens and getting people to volunteer for their gardens. So we have some exciting things coming up, and there will be more added to that, I am sure, as time goes by. But I just wanted to highlight those few things for for all of you, and wish you all a warm weekend. We are expecting a little ice and snow, possibly, I hear. So I will turn this back to Robin. And good to see you, Robin. Good to see
Hey.
you, Janet. Everybody stay warm and safe.
Thank you, Betty. And, we have fundraisers because we give back as an association so much to our community. We will in February announce our grant recipients of our nonprofit organizations. The Jerry Farron and her committee have been so amazingly wonderful at ferreting out all of the applications. And then we do youth service awards, and we'll be giving those awards out to high school students in April. There's so many ways in which we connect with our community. Really, that's what we're all about. It's our fellowship with each other, but it's also how we connect and give back to our greater community. What a wonderful event we had today. It's our 19th webinar for our author series for 2022. As Betty mentioned, Girls in the Still House is the next author. It is Kelly Mustaine. I mean, that is the name of her book. Kelly Mustaine is the author. We do videotape all of our author series webinars, and they are on the website, the WAHI website. So just wanted to shout out to Bobby Helbig, who is co-chair of the author series along with Janet Porter. Thank you, Bobby, for all you do. If you have any recommendations for authors as we move forward in 2022, give those to Bobby and also to Janet. And with that, let's have a great 2022, ladies, and we'll see you next time in February. Bye-bye. Have a great weekend.